Braj Kishori Seva Trust reads Shri Shiksha Patra Shri Shri Ras Viharini Ju Ki Jai Ho. Day 82, Letter 33. In this 33rd letter, it is explained that the cause of everything is the Lord's wish. If something unfavourable arises, it can only be mitigated by being humble before him, because the Lord makes his wish propitious to such humble beings. Then nothing is out of reach to that humble servant. Even in the world, humble beings evoke sympathy. Therefore cultivate humility. It is the only way. Self-aggrandizement and pride are directly contrary to humility, and so you should renounce them. Where that is too difficult, then surrender fully to Sri Acharyaji with full faith and study his teachings in the Nibandha, Sri Subodhiji and 16 texts, Shodash Granth, whilst avoiding bad association. This letter explains how all of this will cleanse all impurities. In the previous letter we read of wisdom and ignorance. Shri Krishna himself eradicated the ignorance of the Vraja devotees, the gopis, and then filled them with wisdom. It was not within their own capabilities. The Lord granted them the power, and then only then were all the obstacles removed, and the devotees came into his close proximity and experienced him, as revealed in the 16 chapters in the 5 chapters of the Srimad Bhagavatam concerning the great circle dance, Ras Panchadhyaya Leela. Therefore, in this path of grace, the principle is that the reward is attained solely with grace. Verse 1. The essential principle of the path of grace is that Sri Krishna's wish is the fundamental cause of everything. Therefore, if the Lord is not favourable to the granting of divine reward, it will remain concealed. In this path of grace, as charted by Sri Vallabhacharyaji, it is the Lord's wish which is the foundation of everything. Therefore, if he is unwilling to grant any reward, or wishes to extend the time taken in that granting, such reward will remain concealed. In this very way, if the Lord so wishes, the divine reward will be granted whether the recipient be a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, priestly, warrior, tradesman, or labourer caste, whether they be parts of society considered as very lowly, such as meat-eaters, leather workers, and sailors, or even completely depraved, they can still find acceptance in this path of grace and receive the divine reward. If, on the other hand, it is not the Lord's wish, then one will remain devoid of the principles of the path of grace and not attain any such reward. The Lord's divine sweet will, is therefore the guiding principle. This has been illustrated in the path's literature, as in the story of Sri Ali Khan and his daughter, who through the Lord's wish became disciples of Sri Gosaiji with the association of Sri Chacha Harivams. So know the Lord's wish to be the most important element here. Verse 2. This concealment is removed when one becomes humble before Sri Hari, for he makes his wish favourable to the humble, even if it were previously unfavourable. Tika 2. When an embodied soul becomes humble before Sri Hari, then his wish is no longer concealed. They enter into a relationship with the Lord, and he accepts them into his service. When humility is coupled with the attitude of being his servant, then the Lord's wish becomes favourable. Just like that, for he feels, this embodied soul is now mine, and should not be neglected. He is now on their side, and thus everything is perfected. Note to verse 2. There is a discrepancy in the word Abharan, concealment or veil here. In some texts the word was varan, which means caste. So the implication using the second word is that caste, not the concealment of his wish, is removed. This has relevance in view of the tika of verse 1. Our misidentification with caste is removed, and we recognize that we are his humble servant. No other status exists. If the Lord's wish is favourable, then no reward is unobtainable to his servants. He blesses the humble, as has been clearly seen in the world. There is absolutely no doubt that every and any reward can be attained with the Lord's wish. Humility is a sole causal stimulus for the Lord's blessings. This is a truth well known even in the world, where souls, however strong their enmity towards him, or however depraved their actions, who have then come to him saying, I am yours, please do with me whatever you will, has been blessed and spared. In this very same manner, souls who have been in a state of forgetfulness with the Lord for a very long time, through many births, who then approach him under the auspices of Sri Acharyaji, surrendering everything to him and becoming humble servants, upon these he is pleased and showers his blessings. Therefore, cultivate such humility and one-pointed dedication to Sri Krishna. In the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Pingala states, "Only you are capable of protecting those souls who have fallen into the well of worldliness, whose eyes are closed due to their attachment to sensuality, and who have been swallowed up by the serpent of time." Pururava states, "Apart from the all-powerful Immaculate Lord, who could recover the heart of a woman of immoral character?" Vyasji also states, "In this terrible age of struggle, it is without a doubt only the Lord's devotees whose lives are justified." Similarly, the Lord uplifts those like Pingala, Pururava, Draupadi and Gajendra, who take shelter in him in their hour of need. So know that the Lord's grace comes through surrender and humility. Verses 4 and 5. Therefore, humility is regarded as the highest method within this path of grace. Pride and ignorance are the constant enemies of humility. They should be renounced by those who are aiming for the reward of this path, along with the corruption of the senses. Tika. The most elevated practice within the path of grace is humility. The way to attain this is total surrender. One who attains humility gains the perfect grace-filled reward. Sri Goswami writes in his Vigyapti treatise, "However I am your servant. Please know me to be yours and let me quickly see your face." Sri Acharyaji writes, "Humility is the best way to satisfy the Lord, so know it to be the finest practice, whilst pride and arrogance only oppose the grace-filled reward. For this very reason," Sri Acharyaji writes in his Vivek Dharya Ashray, Wisdom, Perseverance and Refuge treatise, "Develop the mood of dependence on the Lord and let go of ego-based pride. If you consider yourself independent, then you may become proud and lose the wish to serve. A good servant asks permission from their Lord before taking action. Pride destroys the mood of dependence and the Lord, and so becomes an obstacle to your service, as does arrogance. The pursuit of mundane pleasure ruins the devotional sentiment. The senses are unruly and should therefore be employed in divine service for their purification." Sri Acharyaji teaches in his Nirodha Lakshan, bound by Sri Hari treatise, "For the benefit of the corrupt senses which have become obsessed in the material world, you should employ them in the service of the omnipotent Sri Krishna, whilst knowing that everything belongs to him. In this way, you can become freed from the control of the unruly senses which are attached to the world. They lose their corruption when they are attached to the Lord." Note to verse 5. The nature of the senses is to not drop their attachment to something even when forced to do so. The only way to control them is to redirect them from their worldly attachment into attachment to the service of the Lord. Verse 6. In the above verse it has been stated that if the senses could not be controlled by any means, then you should take shelter in your Lord, and that with that act of surrender alone he will remove the impurities of said senses. Those who take shelter in Sri Acharyaji will have all their impurities incinerated in just a single second by his contact, for he is known to be the form of fire. Tika. Keep your faith firm and one-pointed. Placing your faith anywhere else destroys the devotional reward. There is a famous example in the story of Damodar Das's Sambalwari, in which his wife's faith wandered just a little bit. As a result, she gave birth to an ungodly soul. Sri Goswami has written, "If I so much as get a mere whiff of putting my faith in another, then let my throat be cut." Thus taking shelter in anyone or anything other than our Lord is not to be tolerated. When Sri Krishna's father Sri Nandaraji went to worship the goddess Ambika, he got swallowed up by the serpent Sudarshan, and only escaped when he took refuge in the Lord and implored him. Therefore let it be known that resorting to anyone or anything other than the Lord is a huge obstacle to devotion. When one thus forms a relationship with Sri Acharyaji, who is the form of fire, then one's faults become like kindling wood and burn to ashes in a single second. We conclude our reading here today. Aaj ke Anand ki jai ho. Sab Vaishnavan ko sadar sa prem sa denya sanand Jai Shri Krishna. Shri Shri Ras Viharini Ju ki jai ho.